Welcome back to State of the FBS. Today, going to be getting you guys ready for week 2 of the college football season. Had a very good week 1, a lot of entertaining games, a lot of top 10 matchups, which we are not used to in week 1. So nice to see all those games. Texas versus Ohio State was a very good game. Same for Notre Dame, Miami, and Clemson LSU. We got 3 really good games from the top 10 matchups. And now we head into week 2 where we only have one ranked versus ranked matchup, which I think is a bit of a shame, but a couple in here that I do think are very good games. We got a renewed rivalry in the border war between Kansas and Missouri. Very excited for that one. So I'm going to give you my picks for some of the biggest games of this upcoming weekend. And we're going to start with the Michigan-Oklahoma game. This is where game day is going to be this weekend. John Mateer looked great in his first weekend as Oklahoma Sooner last weekend versus Nowhere State or whoever they played. But Oklahoma, I think the key for this game is really make it about your skill position players. Michigan is better in the trenches than Oklahoma, I think, especially on the defensive side. If Oklahoma can get Michigan spread out, try to work with your receivers, get space up the middle for Jaden Ott and John Mateer, you want to try to get Michigan into space, indecision, not get them being able to just run downhill at you. I think if you put them in that kind of position, an obvious passing down, or if Michigan can really key in on your run game, then you're in trouble. However, if you can keep them spaced out, I think Oklahoma will be able to score efficiently. And if they can do that, I just don't see Michigan keeping up. This is Bryce Underwood's first really big-time start in college football. I know it did start last week, obviously, but this is just different. On the road at Oklahoma, there's going to be a lot of pressure, a lot of crowd noise, and he's going to really have to step into it. Even if he does exceed expectations, can he go toe-to-toe with John Mateer? I just don't think so. So despite a lot of talent on this Michigan team, I think they can play disciplined in the trenches. That's their path to victory. You really want to make this a low-scoring game, but I'm just not sure they're quite up to the task. I really like John Mateer, and I think that Oklahoma is going to be able to get this one done versus Michigan. So give me the Sooners in that one. Then for Kansas and Missouri, very excited for this game. Haven't seen it since Missouri joined the SEC, and I think it's going to be fun. Kansas doesn't really have a lot on the team other than Jalen Daniels, which is a bit of a bummer. The defense was already not good last year, and then you lose the majority of your secondary, including Kobe Bryant. I just don't think that's a recipe for success at all. You're really going to need Bengali Kamara to step up in the middle from that linebacking spot, kind of be that air traffic control guy, keep everyone in their spots, knowing their assignments. I think that's really your only way to compete with this Missouri team, but it is a rivalry game, so you never know. As for Missouri, though, Bo Perbule looked very good. I get it was against Central Arkansas, but still, some of the plays are just being a great athlete, and I think that kind of stuff is going to transfer, but still, you'd like to see some more play versus better opponents. Obviously, the Kansas defense is better than Central Arkansas, even if they're not very good. But for Missouri, again, like I said for Oklahoma, make this about your playmakers. Ahmad Hardy, I think, is one of the best running backs in the SEC this season. Kevin Coleman Jr. was a playmaking machine at Mississippi State last year. I think he can be that for Missouri. So if you're Bo Perbule, you really want to get Hardy going, get Kevin Coleman Jr. going, make your offense as dynamic as possible. And then the Missouri defense, I think, definitely has enough talent. They've got some great edge rushers. You really just want to keep Kansas in check. If you can keep Jalen Daniels hemmed in, that's when he starts to panic, try to do too much, makes mistakes. And I think if you get him doing that, Missouri, especially with the home field advantage, will be on the path to victory. So give me the Tigers over the Jayhawks in this renewed rivalry. And then a fun one that I honestly didn't know was happening this season until I looked at the schedule a couple days ago is Duke hosting Illinois. And what a weird game, but what a good time for this game. Duke with a fair amount of hype by Duke standards coming into the season. You bring in Darian Mensah from Tulane, extremely talented quarterback. The running back room, I think, is solid. Obviously, losing Star Thomas to Tennessee, I think, is a bummer. But still, Jacquez Moore and Anderson Castle seemed okay versus Elon last week. And not the most ringing endorsement you've heard, I know. But still, I like them as a pairing. Then for Duke, the receiving core of Cooper Marquette and Keyshawn Brown, I think, should help Mensah out a lot. If you're Illinois, you need to get Mensah uncomfortable. You have some very good defensive linemen / edge rushers. James Thompson Jr. is a force on the defensive line. And then off the edge, Gabe Jacobs, I think, is a very talented edge rusher. I really like him a lot. If you can get those two guys working, keep Darian Mensah having to second-guess himself, where Mensah really thrives is not necessarily these throws on the run, but throws where he moves out of the pocket, then resets his feet and fires. He's very good at that. You saw it a lot at Tulane last season. Would extend, reset, fire, make big plays. I think that's really where he excels. For Illinois, you want to keep him hemmed in the pocket and really make him make plays from there. He's not quite as good from there, though he can still definitely beat you. As for the Illinois offense, Luke Altmaier, very experienced quarterback. just let him take what the game gives him. That's something he's very good at. That's why Illinois, I think, is a sleeper pick for the playoff this year for a lot of people. It's that Luke Altmaier, while not having the highest ceiling of anyone, is a very, very, very high floor player. So I think he can definitely keep this game under control for the Illini. Aiden Lowry is a very solid running back, especially against a Duke defensive line that aren't exactly world beaters. I think that's really where Illinois has a chance to shine in this game, is in the trenches. And if they can get those trenches going, make this a kind of ground and pound type affair, I think that favors them a lot. If you start getting into a battle of air attacks, I like Darian Mensah to win that. So I am going to take Duke in this one for the upset. I like the home field advantage. I like Darian Mensah making his kind of first big Power 4 start. Illinois coming to town, that'd be a great way to knock off the number 11 team in the country for the Blue Devils and really put them on the map for this season. We saw a great week 1 for the ACC outside of Clemson, but I think that Duke is going to keep that train rolling this weekend with an upset over the Fighting Illini. Got another out-of-conference rivalry game in the Cy-Hawk game, Iowa traveling to Ames to take on Iowa State, and Iowa State already 2-0. One of those, obviously, the game in Ireland, and then their cupcake game last weekend, but I like the Cyclones in this one. Rocco Becht is just a much better quarterback than Mark Gronowski at this stage. I know there was a lot of hype on Gronowski after a couple of videos of him in the offseason, was inconsistent at best last weekend, wasn't able to complete a ton of passes for Iowa last week, and the receivers, I don't think they had a receiver with more than 18 yards, if I remember correctly, from last week's game for the Hawkeyes, and you just can't do that versus this Iowa State defense. It's a very talented secondary. The linebackers stay home. They don't have a ton of sacks, only one on the year, so maybe if the Iowa offensive line can buy Gronowski some time, you start to be able to function that way. But the big issue for me for Iowa in this one is Kamari Moulton is out for this game. And that's a lot of pressure to put on Xavier Williams, the redshirt freshman, and then Terrell Washington Jr. I think asking those two guys to step up in a rivalry game against one of the better quarterbacks in the Big 12 and Rocco Becht on the road, I think it's just a bit too much. And with how run-centric this Iowa offense is, I just don't think they're going to quite have enough. So give me the Cyclones in the Cy-Hawk game this year. Another in-state, out-of-conference game this week is Baylor heading to the Fort Worth area to take on SMU. And number 17 SMU, this is a talented team. I think people forget kind of because of the way they got their brains beat in the college football playoff last year. They're still pretty talented. They did lose a ton of their receiving talent. I think that's really the big issue is your skill position players are mostly gone, Rashad Smith included. And Kevin Jennings is going to have to rely on a lot of new faces in here. Romello Brenson brought in. Jordan Hudson, I guess, took a break from being Bill Belichick's girlfriend to go play receiver for SMU. Kind of interesting name there. And then the best weapon on this team is kind of a hybrid tight end receiver. Some places have him listed at the slot receiver starting position. Some places he's tight end for SMU. It's TJ Maryland. Very versatile weapon. Really like this guy. I think you look at Baylor last week versus Auburn, and they really got picked apart in the run game. The passing defense seems solid. So for me, that concerns me a little bit for SMU, where they're so pass-centric. You want to work through Kevin Jennings, and Baylor seemed to be committed to and able to stop the pass versus Auburn last week. Now, they did get shredded on the ground. I just don't know if SMU has that same capability in the ground game. As for Baylor, it was a weird week 1. Like I said, got torched on the ground by Auburn, allowed over 300 rushing yards to the Tigers. But also, the offense was great. Sawyer Robertson threw for over 400 yards, 3 touchdowns. Texas State transfer Cole Wilson looked incredible. Michael Trigg was almost uncoverable over the middle. Auburn didn't know what to do about him at all. And I think if you're Baylor and you bring in that passing attack to SMU, it's really going to be a fun matchup. The SMU secondary is led by one of the better safety duos in the country, including one of the best safeties, period, in the country, and Isaiah Nwokobia. Very talented player. I believe has graded out over an 85 in the last 2 seasons in both pass and run coverage grade by PFF. And I know PFF grades definitely are not gospel, but you look at that plus the box score stats, plus just the tape. Turn on the tape and watch this guy. He's extremely talented. Then on the other side of him, Ahmad Moses is another very good safety. And you have a solid corner in Deuce Harmon. So it's kind of strength on strength here with Baylor's passing attack, SMU's pass defense, and then weakness on a weakness because you look at Baylor's defensive line and still a big injury. Jackie Marshall is questionable heading into this game, and it's looking like he might not play after the ankle sprain suffered against Auburn. So I'm operating under the assumption that Jackie Marshall does not play in this game, and because of that, I think that hurts Baylor a little bit just too much to really rely on this defense, and I think it kind of devolves into a shootout. However, with that said, I kind of like Sawyer Robertson in a shootout a bit more than Kevin Jennings. So I'm going to take Baylor to go on the road and upset SMU in this game. I think Sawyer Robertson has a great game. I know this SMU secondary is incredibly talented. I think he's good enough to pick them apart anyway. So give me the Bears on the road in this Texas showdown over the SMU Mustangs. Second to last game to go over this week is USF, kind of the surprise team of week one with their beatdown of Boise and Byron Brown bursting onto the scene. Way too much alliteration in that sentence. They're going to be heading down to Gainesville to take on the number 13 ranked Florida Gators, who beat Long Island 55-0 in week one because Long Island is basically a high school team. However, I think any shutout is still impressive. They only allowed 2 first downs to Long Island, so you did what you're supposed to do versus that caliber of team. However, this is a Florida defense which over the past few years struggles against running quarterbacks. And from a Florida perspective, that really concerns me because Byron Brown is one of the best at that. Can hurt you through the air, can hurt you on the ground. We saw his running ability versus Boise State. It looked like a bowling ball out there at times while still dropping dimes to other guys down the field. Chase Nimrod, I think, was a revelation coming in from Tennessee. His speed really played well against Boise. Does that translate to a more athletic Florida defense? Not entirely sure. I think that USF's path to victory here is just Byron Brown taking over the game and Florida not having an answer for him. As for the other side of the ball, this USF defensive line is going to need to keep stepping it up. The run defense was great against Boise State in week one. You're playing against a top 10 offensive line in the country, probably in the Florida offensive line this year. And then Jaden Ball is a very, very good running back. Florida has some talented receivers. It's going to be a much tougher assignment on defense. So I do think Florida gets this one. I think the talent gap is just a little bit too big for USF, but Florida cannot afford to sleep on the Bulls at all. I know there might be some looking ahead to your game at LSU the week after this week, but still, if you look past USF, you're going to be looking at a won and a loss column, I think, for the Gators. So I do think they're going to be focused enough to keep this one in the win column. I just think it's close, very close in Gainesville in the Swamp this weekend, but number 13 Florida emerges 2-0 and hands USF their first loss of the season. Then finally, it is Vanderbilt heading to Blacksburg, Virginia to take on Virginia Tech. I think this is a fun matchup. These are two very fun quarterbacks in Diego Pavia and Kyron Drones. There's so much unrealized potential in Kyron Drones. I would love to see it finally break out on a national stage. I know it's Vanderbilt, so it's not like the biggest, it's not the primetime game, but it's a good game. It's a fun game, and I think there are going to be more eyes on this than maybe people would expect. So for Vanderbilt, what you really have to do is keep Virginia Tech off balance. You saw it against South Carolina. They could not handle their edge discipline versus Lenora Sellers, and with Diego Pavia and Cedric Alexander, try to keep Virginia Tech in conflict. I think that's really your goal. Then if you can do that, start working to Eli Stowers and then put another layer of stress on this Virginia Tech defense. I'm just not sure they can cope with it. Virginia Tech's best player from last year on defense is now playing at LSU, and Mansour Delane. The country saw what he could do versus Clemson last Saturday, and I just don't think Virginia Tech has guys that can replace him. The front seven is not as strong as it needs to be, I think, against this Vanderbilt team, and Diego Pavia he's just that guy, a quarterback for Vanderbilt, is willing to put his body on the line to win games, and I think he's going to be able to do it on the road. This will be a very fun environment. Inner Sandman's going to be going crazy. I'm super excited to watch this game, but I just don't think Virginia Tech's defense is quite strong enough for what they're going to need to shut down Pavia, Alexander, and Stowers all together. Although for Vanderbilt, you're going to need to stay home because if you let Kyron Drones escape, he can create and he can make some big things happen. Although I just don't think it's going to quite be enough. So give me Vanderbilt over Virginia Tech in that one. But that is your week 2 preview for college football. Sorry for a little bit of a shorter video this week. Had a lot going on outside of YouTube this week. Very busy with school. So hopefully I'll be able to get up a actual week 2 recap video once we're done. Unlike for week 1, try to get some shorts out for y'all so you could at least see some reactions that way. But expect a bit more regular content here as we move in. I get a more set schedule over the next few weeks. But if you did enjoy the video, please like, please subscribe, keep tapping into the channel. I've really enjoyed the viewership so far. It seems like a lot of you guys are plugged in, enjoying the content. So really appreciate that. But that is it for this week, and I'll see y'all next time on State of the FBS.